Hey guys, Mike D with Sail Junky. We've got an exciting new series of videos that we're going to be putting out here. It's going to be 3 videos. What I did was worked with Captain Paul Foer from forefront.com. You may have seen my recent interview with Captain Paul. Well, what we've done is we've gotten together and Paul did basically, it's not a survey, but really kind of a consult with me on the boat that I purchased. He kind of went through the boat and talked to me about the various systems, the types of things I should be thinking about, types of plans I should make based on the plan I have to take my boat around the Atlantic, Annapolis to Bermuda to the Azores, all around. But so what Paul did was he really is working with me to help me understand the boat I have, some of the things that I need to do, the things that I can do with the boat over time, and help me make a plan to get sailing on my boat and get planning for my big trip in about 8 years. So the way we're breaking these videos down is we've got a group of 3. We're going to be starting outside with the hull and talking all about the hull and the running gear. Then we're going to talk about the deck and the rigging and those types of things. And then inside and somewhere in there we're going to put in the motor as well and talk about the motor I've got and some of the issues and just some of the thoughts that I need to be thinking about with my boat. The idea here is if you watch this, you can see that the value of getting with somebody pre-purchase on a boat, and I'm not talking about a survey necessarily. What I'm talking about is talking to a consultant about getting the right boat for you. I wish I had done that ahead of time. I don't regret getting my Magick Byrd, my 1972 Pearson 36. But really, to do it right, I would think that what I need to do is talk to somebody, hire somebody like Paul, to make sure that the boats I'm looking at are right for me. We can do our research online, we can do all the looking on Yacht World that we want to do, but truly talking to somebody that's qualified to help us understand, hey, ask the right questions. Where are you going to be sailing? What are your long-term plans? Those types of things, so that when you do start looking for the boat for you, you're looking at the boat with the right draft, the right motor, the right sail plan, those kind of things. So I hope you enjoy the video that we've put together here. I really appreciate Captain Paul for doing this with me. This is, again, like I said, a 3-video series that we're going to be going through my boat. One exciting bit of news is after this, we are also starting, Captain Paul and I, starting a video series together called No Stupid Questions. This really runs in alignment with Sail Junky magazine and our mission to really promote community among the sailing people that want to get into sailing or into sailing, sharing knowledge, that type of thing. If you get online and you ask the wrong question in the wrong Facebook group, you can really get pummeled for asking questions. The idea of this one is not don't ask any stupid questions. The idea is there are no stupid questions. So we're going to be gathering those questions from our Sail Junky readers, from the various Facebook groups that we're involved with, and then Paul and I will be sitting down on video and talking about those questions and getting answers, or maybe reaching out to subject matter experts in the field, maybe in rigging or in motors or what have you, or fiberglass work, whatever it is. The questions we have, we're going to make sure we have qualified answers to really give the people that have asked them a lot of insight, and hopefully other viewers that watch it. So I hope you enjoy this series where Paul does his consult with me on my boat. I think it's valuable if somebody's thinking about getting a boat to kind of watch this type of thing, and I hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to doing more of these kind of things.
Good morning, Paul.
Hi.
Nice to finally meet you in person.
Thank you. You too. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I told you.
How about that?
Yeah. That's my beauty.
You're gonna go places, aren't you?
I'm gonna go a lot of places. Big places.
Well, you're in a terrific spot now, and a terrific spot to do some filming, because there's so many different types of boats here. The first thing is obviously it's a deep draft boat. That's like the very first thing that is the most important factor of all. And the most limiting factor, or the most expansive factor of all, is what's the draft. Take a look at this boat here. Kind of a similar keel, kind of a similar bottom. Think about it. This guy's going to anchor in as close to shore as he or she wants. Pretty much pull into any marina and not worry about the tide going out, not worry about running aground, not worry about deviating out of a channel a little bit, whereas you or anyone on a boat of this draft is going to have to be more careful.
Okay.
Now, if you said to me, well, Paul, I just want to sail in the Bahamas, I'd go, well, this boat's going to be better for you.
Right.
Okay. If you said to me, well, I'm going out in the ocean, deep ocean, I'm going to go all over the world, well, this is probably going to be better. That's the number one factor. So, Mike and I have just met, and what we're looking to do for your benefit, and for ours as well, of course, is to give you straightforward factual information and straightforward judgment from me based on my experience in order to help Mike along, in order to help people along in the same way, and in order to introduce ourselves and what we hope to do for people who are sail junkie readers and viewers, people that want to get into boating, want to get into sailing. We're going to be looking at boating in general and sailing in particular. We're going to begin with looking at Mike's boat in particular. And the way I would do is if Mike came out of the blue and hired me and said, I need help getting my boat ready so I can really sail. So let me first of all say I'm not a surveyor. I don't call myself a surveyor. I'm more of a generalist consultant. I'm more like Captain Kirk rather than a Scotty or a Spock or a McCoy. Okay? I'm the generalist who looks at it all. And it's based on my experience of sailing, operating, owning, restoring, fixing, working with people in going down this path. So we just talked about the big limiting factor of all that should be considered is your draft. The depth from the waterline down to where you're aground. Because obviously we're going sailing. We don't want to be aground. You will run aground sometime. You just hope it's not done in a serious way or a dangerous way or nobody's hurt. And as we just looked at a couple other boats nearby, one was a shallower draft boat and then one is a very shallow draft boat with a swing keel. What we're going to focus on today is Magick. And then we're going to go around the marina and look at a number of different boats because here at Harrington Harbor North in Deal, Maryland, just south of Annapolis, are hundreds and hundreds of boats. And as it's late February, they're all laid up. Hopefully the yard's going to come back to life very quickly when the weather warms up. So we get a chance today to look at a lot of different boats. Just look at all the different kinds of boats, not only power and sail, but full keel boats, modified keel boats, big boats, fiberglass mainly, some maybe of wood and aluminum, some boats that are maybe best situated for coastal cruising and inland sailing, and other boats that maybe are best situated for heavy-duty ocean sailing, long-distance cruising. So Mike, why don't you tell us briefly, just very briefly, what kind of boat this is, what year she is, why you bought her, what were some of the things that went into your process in buying what's going to become Magick Byrd?
So the reason I bought Magick Byrd was, well, as readers of Sail Junky might know, it was kind of an impulse thing. But what I love about the Pearson 36, it's a 1972 Pearson 36, is I do like the draft of it because what I've been looking for in a boat is something that I can take on a great adventure. The big goal that I have in life is to be able to take this boat on a loop around the Atlantic. That's from Annapolis to Bermuda to the Azores, Europe, down to Africa, Canaries, back over to Caribbean and back up. That's my big goal. So in researching, and I've done a lot of research on different boats, I certainly wish I would have met Paul before I bought the boat, but I did some research and felt confident and really fell into what Paul will certainly laugh about, a great deal on a boat. So as we go through this, I'm sure we'll find out how great that deal was. But hey, this is my Magick Byrd, and this is what I've got. So I'm going to be working her out and getting her ready to sail this year.
Wow, that's great. Okay, so you and I will talk later at lunch about more of those details. But for the readers here, you've given a good idea of what you're looking for. And while I can't say to you one way or the other, it's the perfect boat or the right boat or the wrong boat, every boat is a compromise. And you've heard me say that. And viewers are going to hear me say that again. So what I'm looking at here is a boat with a good reputation, very solid, well-built boat. Of course, the Pearson boat is an old name in the boating business, but a Pearson from one year could be very different from a Pearson from another year. It could have actually been a different factory. It could have been, who knows, a different mold, a different design, different management, different materials, et cetera, et cetera. But you're talking about a period when boats were built pretty darn strongly, and you can just tell right off very quickly, a good quick look at the hull. One of the first things that we always want to do is just kind of run our hands along all the way and feel if there's any places where things have been scraped up, where there's any deflections. I think we can kind of see here that this is the widest part of the boat. This is the beam, that the boat's rubbed up against certain places. And look what's been pretty severely rubbed here. That's not that big a deal. But the first thing I would notice is that the boat does not have a rub rail. Okay? In other words, a rub rail, let's see, this boat barely has it. You might call this a rub rail. It's not really a rub rail. Let's see over here. Okay, so here's a much newer and very different Pearson. Look at the heavy-duty rub rail all the way around. Okay? But look, some of these boats have them, some don't. Okay? Here's an older Erickson. It's got an aluminum rub rail. This boat here, Impatience, has got a teak and bronze rub rail. So we're talking a boat from a different era. But if we go back to your boat, and look at this interesting keel, a wing keel. Okay? This is a fairly newer type of keel. And the shallow draft, but gives you much of the advantages of a deeper draft keel and the stability and so forth. But we joke about it. If you ever run aground in a boat with a keel like this, you've just turned the boat into an anchor. This type of a keel becomes an anchor. And I do talk about running aground, not because I've ever done it, right? And there's so many other things you want to look at too. The rudder, the propeller, the shaft, the struts, what we call the running gear. But on here, the first thing you can notice is that at times there had been a lot of barnacles on here. What that means is the boat was probably neglected for some time. It wasn't hauled out and painted on a regular basis. This is very typical that at the waterline you've got an awful lot of moss that has dried on it. In order to paint the bottom here, it's going to need a pretty serious grind down. Most of the time when you get the bottom painted, they say, well, you know, it's X amount of foot depending on the bottom paint you use, and they always caution you and say, well, that's just a light sand. You know, if you want the heavy duty sand, that's a whole other thing. So one of the things I like to tell people is that if you think about what the boat really is, you know, the cynical answer, it's a hole in the water surrounded by fiberglass into which money is poured. This kind of the philosophical answer I say is, what is this boat really? Well, it's a hole in the water, the relatively thin shell of fiberglass in this case, in the case of most boats. It's a thin shell of fiberglass with built-in leaks. The fiberglass itself, over time, is a built-in leak. It's way more than I want to get into today. But eventually, most all fiberglass boats need to have the bottom redone, or they will have blisters, and the blisters need to be corrected. So what we have here is a very common type of setup, whereby there's a strut, the shaft comes out. Now look, see, now this right away tells me there's a little bit of play in here. Maybe that's normal, maybe not. I don't know. But the shaft is turning real easily. I can tell you that the propeller is quite sharp, but it should be sanded down and looked at carefully, because there may be evidence that the alloys have been sucked out of this. I don't know. It's a good sign that the zincs are pretty darn good. These, of course, are attracting the pyrolysis, the electrolysis that may occur instead of the shaft being eaten away and the propeller being eaten away. These are sacrificial anodes, and to see that they're in fairly good shape on a boat that otherwise said to me it was neglected for a while, this is a good sign. I would have the surveyor look very, very carefully, because look what's going on here with the shaft. See, I'm not an expert in this area at all, but look what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you will also paint your running gear, you know, especially the propeller. You need the propeller painted. I don't know what's going on here, but my guess is that you've got a pretty serious problem, that the shaft's worn away. And then inside here, there's supposed to be a bearing called a cutlass bearing. That actually seems pretty tight. You've got 2 bolts on here and a cotter pin going through. It looks like a pretty substantial propeller. One of the things you might want to consider is replacing this with a folding prop. But this, as I've mentioned, is in pretty serious need of really taking this down, because otherwise you're never going to get a real nice, smooth bottom in here. So you have the rudder attached on a skeg. This is called a skeg. And what you've got here is fairly common. You've got the skeg, the rudder, but the prop is attached through this strut on a lot of boats, in particular cruising boats. Not all, but some, like my boat. The keel is brought back up, and the whole skeg is coming out like so, and the rudder is what we call, it's in an aperture. Here the rudder is much, much more exposed. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It is what it is. I happen to feel that having the propeller in an aperture is probably better able to protect the propeller than as it's hanging off of here. Another thing is, on some boats you'll have a heavy flap of like heavy rubber here, or this will be set in a little bit differently, so like you can't get a stick or a twig or a line caught in between there. And on the age of this boat, you're new to the boat, you probably didn't get a lot of information from the owner for one of 2 reasons. Either you didn't know the owner,
Right.
or even if you did, the owner might have said, I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of people,
The boat being donated, it was kind of like,
that's it.
that's it.
As is, where is.
Yep.
Sucker.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you know.
So we had a discussion on this yesterday with my mechanic, how so often people get a boat and they don't know anything about the maintenance. They don't know what was done, when it was done, whether it's the engine, the sails, the rigging, what have you. So it might be a good idea to assume that nothing was done, and to start in a way that you say, okay, it's going to be my boat for a long, long time. I'm going to go many, many places. I'm going to sail around the Atlantic.
Yep.
I want to get it all done early.
Yep.
There's many reasons to do it that way, which are, I think, pretty obvious. We don't have to go into it. But among them might be repairs to the deck if needed, new prop and shaft if needed, major work on the engine if needed, motor mounts to the engine if needed, perhaps pulling and replacing your Seacocks.
Mm-hmm.
The Seacocks, or the ball valves, are the valves that open and close on the inside of your through hulls. I want to go back to that thought I had earlier, that the boat is this thin shell with a series of holes in it, with valves and pumps and hoses and tanks, to let certain liquids in and certain liquids out. And if you think about the boat in terms of that, you will pretty much cover the basics of everything the water line on down. You want to make sure tanks, pumps, hoses, filters all work together in a way to keep certain water in, certain water out, certain fluids in, certain fluids out. Same thing with your engine, whether it's oil or antifreeze. The same thing with your head system, whether it's solid waste or liquid waste, whether it's what we call black water or gray water, whether it's getting water in and out of the sink, all those things. That you think about everything in terms of gravity, pumps, hoses, fuel lines, etc., etc. That's a huge part of your overall maintenance. Not all of it, but a huge part of it. You know, this looks pretty far gone. And again, probably all your through hulls and Seacocks should be pulled and either replaced or really looked at very carefully.
Well, I think we'll see when we get inside. The Seacocks are, this is very typical of what I'm having with my through hulls, okay, on the, especially the copper stuff.
What's going on is any metal that's exposed starts to act like a battery. And electrons are moving alloys back and forth between them. And there's different theories about whether you should completely bond a boat and how to ground it and all that. It's very technical stuff that I don't fully understand. I've talked with physicists about it, and they argue about what to do and what not to do. But again, this is an area where you're trying to let certain fluids in or out, and you've got to take care of that. Let's take a look up here. Beautiful, beautiful bow. She's got really nice lines. And if you look at both sides down here and all, you know, it's still pretty shiny. It was waxed sometime not too long ago, apparently. Your stripe up along there is in good shape. Your stripes along the water line are in good shape. These are either vinyl or they're painted in place, and they did a pretty good job on this throughout. Again, going back to the boat is a hole in the water. It's a shell. It's got liquids coming in, liquids coming out. So you really want to know intuitively where everything is going to. If you ever spring a leak, well, it's most likely going to be at the stuffing box. But then the other likely places could be keel bolts in a severe situation. It's otherwise going to be at your raw water intake. It's going to be at the head intake, maybe a sink drain, what have you. So you want to really know where all your through hulls are, and then you're going to want to exercise the handles on them, lubricate them, and on an age of this boat, which may have been neglected, we don't know how old, we don't know when it was done, maybe you need to pull all those Seacocks and replace them. But if metal's been sucked out over time, yeah, they're weak. So that's the first video in this series, really looking at the waterline down. I want to thank Paul Foer, Captain Paul Foer, for doing this series with me and really spending the time. He's a wealth of knowledge. If you've got some need for some consulting on your boat, pre-purchase or post-purchase, I encourage you to reach out to Paul at forefront.com and see what he can do for you. He's a wealth of knowledge in this stuff, and as you see in the videos as we go through. The second video in the series is going to be we're going to have a general conversation about systems. We also look at the deck and some of the running rigging. And the third video is inside the cabin, looking at the different systems and talking about the motor. Thanks for joining us on this first video, and we look forward to seeing you on the subsequent videos that follow.